Good day, everyone, and welcome back to another Trucking Matters webinar with our focus on critical safety matters. I am your host, Thom Albrecht, and I am the Chief Revenue Officer at Reliance Partners. Our subject matter experts today are Mark Barlar and Daniel Vega, both members of the Safety Impact Team at Reliance Partners. Today is a continuation of our 9-part monthly series on the 7 CSA Basics. And today's focus is going to be about controlled substances and alcohol. Guys, I want to welcome you back to the show. Can you believe Valentine's Day is 2 days away from here?
Yeah, time's flying by. Almost getting closer to March.
You got 36 hours to get your act together by Valentine's morning there. Well, listen, for everyone on the call today, we always go through this. So if you've listened to us before, bear with us, but we always have a few newcomers. I'd like to take a moment and ask Mark and Daniel to just tell a little bit about their background, what they've done, including what they are now doing at Reliance Partners.
All right. Well, I guess I'll start off. My name's Mark Barler. I'm a retired former master inspector from the Wisconsin State Patrol. I retired back in 2020 and started working with Reliance Partners the following day. Did 22 and a half years with the Wisconsin State Patrol and conducted about 10,000 roadside inspections. I was an instructor for FMCSA for the Part A program, which is Driver's Hours of Service CDL's medical qualifications, the hazardous material inspection program, the cargo tank inspection program. I'm glad to be here today.
Great. Daniel?
Hi guys, my name is Daniel Vega. I'm a former state trooper in Arizona. I've been in the industry uh, close to 14 years. Spent roughly 10 years in the southwest part of Arizona doing commercial vehicle inspections. After that, transitioned over to the insurance industry and helping clients with compliance and safety, doing hours of service presentation, vehicle maintenance presentations, and data queues.
That's great. And you see the guy's contact information here. We will share it again later on. Why don't we go to the next slide, Mark? Okay, our next webinar will be March 19th, and it will be on driver fitness. You see the series that started back in September. Sign up information is available on LinkedIn and all the socials, as well as your RP agent has that link available as well. If you missed one of our previous podcasts or it added particular value for you and you want to share it with others in your organization, it's now available on podcast. Actually, it has been for a while on all of the various podcast forums. And I want to make everyone aware that we've just started to promote our 5th annual Trucking Matters event at the Grand Hyatt in Nashville on July 22nd and 23rd. For those of you who have not attended one before, the 22nd is really about check-in, networking, dinners. All of the content is on the 23rd, and it's going to be a great day. We've got a motor carrier panel, typically motor carriers between maybe 30 and up to 300 trucks. We've got a shipper panel. We'll have 5 shippers. Probably this year's marquee shipper is going to be General Mills, but all of them are great, and many of them are very friendly towards the small and mid-sized motor carrier community. My CEO, Andrew, will lead an insurance panel, which, by the way, several of the shippers said was one of the most informative things they've ever heard. They've always heard it only from the perspective of motor carriers. We will have a litigation panel. Yours truly will provide a freight capacity and economic update. And then we're going to have a special guest speaker. We're going to wait to announce that, but someone from the FMCSA will be there conducting a town hall, which means you all will get to ask questions. So it's going to be a great day. In March, we will go live with actual signups, but we're just beginning to promote it in the save the date format. Relative to today, a couple of other things. We welcome questions. You can submit those through the chat icon down below. And then, of course, I do need to really read this disclaimer. This presentation and webinar are designed for educational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as legal advice. The opinions and views expressed herein are not necessarily those of Reliance Partners and belong solely to the individual contributors. Love doing that obligatory disclaimer, but there's a reason for it. Mark, let's go to the next slide.
All right. So we start off each webinar during this series with how everything works together, how everything is calculated, and how we get our CSA scores that we do. It all starts off with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. They oversee everything that goes into highway trucking. They came up with the compliance, safety, and accountability and the safety measurement system, which gives us our seven basics, which is our CSA scores.
Okay. The SMS analyzes the carrier's on-road performance by converting the carrier's inspection and crash data into basic measures and percentiles. So basically, the higher the score, the worse it is. It's the opposite. So it's higher, the worse, the lower, the better.
So all roadside inspection violations that pertain to a basic are assigned a severity weight. The only way that a value is assigned to your CSA score is if a violation is listed on an inspection report when it comes to controlled substances. This it reflects its association with the crash occurrences and crash consequences. The severity weights help differentiate the levels of crash risk associated with the various violations attributed to each basic.
So, like Mark was mentioning, every violation has a point. The violation severity weights range on a scale from 1 to 10 for each basic, where 1 represents the lowest crash risk and 10 represents the highest crash risk relative to other violations in the basic. If you receive a violation, there's a add a service designation, there will automatically add 2 points to that value.
Now, all on-road safety events are assigned a time weight, which increases with time. Um, from the 0 to 6 months from a violation listed on an inspection report, the point value that it's assigned is multiplied by 3. From 6 to 12 months, the point value is multiplied by 2. And then 12 to 24 months, there's no time weight adjustment. It's the point value that it is. And after 24 months, violations are no longer used to assess a carrier's safety posture in the SMS. But it's important to remember that any violation listed on an inspection report will stay on the driver's PSP report for 3 years. So it's interesting that it stays on CSA for 2 and it'll stay on the driver's PSP for 3 years.
And guys, before we continue, reminder, we will take questions throughout today, but we're kind of laying the groundwork on the technical aspects here, and the guys are wanting to make sure you know the scoring system, etc. But we're also going to be getting into things like what some of the best practices are that they've seen, recommendations around when you might have a beer at the end of your week of duty, etc. Maybe not even recommendations because I don't think we want to go there, but observations they've seen from well-run motor carriers. Take it away.
So the threshold for controlled substance alcohol, if we look at the screen, if you're a passenger carrier, it's a 65%, hazmat carriers is 75, and then general carrier, you're going to be at a 80%. So once you hit that 80%, then you'll be an alert in the controlled substance and alcohol. Basic.
So the way the point values are calculated, they take the total points for violations and then they divide it by the total time weight of the qualifying inspections. So an inspection report that was done this month is going to have a time weight of 3. And any violations that would occur on that inspection report gets placed on top in that measure, and that point value is multiplied by 3. And that's how they come up with that basic measure. And a qualifying inspection is every roadside inspection, which is a level 1, 2, 3, and 6. A lot of people still really don't realize that there are 8 levels of inspections. The level 3, and we always start out with level 3, explaining that that's a driver-only inspection. So controlled substances always comes in with a driver-only inspection. A level 2 includes a level 3. A level two is a walk around inspection of the vehicle and a driver inspection. And then a level one incorporates a level two and three. And then the officer goes underneath the vehicle, checking the brake system, suspension system, and framework of the vehicle. Level six is a very specialized inspection. It's a point of origin inspection conducted on vehicles transporting certain types of radioactive hazardous materials. Those motor carriers that transport this type of material understand if they need a level six or not.
So using the example Mark just kind of discussed, so we're going to talk about an example of how you would find your actual basic measure. So this company has 10 level 1 through 3 inspections over the past 24 months. So we have four inspections over 12 months ago. And in those four inspections, we have one violation for operating a CMV while in possession of alcohol. That is a 10-pointer. Then we have three inspections that were set 7 months ago, and out of those three, we had one violation for operating CMV while prohibited from performing safety-sensitive functions. We have three inspections in the past 6 months with one violation for operating while under the influence within the past 24 hours, which that's a 10-pointer, and you times it times three, that gives you 30 points. So using the equation, so we have four times one because they're more than 12 months, and then we have three inspections times a time weight of two, that gives us six, and then three times three gives us nine. So then we're going to add the total points, which gives us 60 divided by 19, and we come out with our basic measure of 3.15.
Daniel, quick question, or Mark. So you talk about while in possession of alcohol, a couple scenarios. The driver's going to be heading home a few hours from now, and he's picked up a six pack. It's back in the sleeper berth area. Nothing's opened. What do you say about that?
You're going to be placed out of service if you get inspected.
What about if the driver's heading home, can't wait to see his wife, decides to pick up a bottle of wine? It's back there as well.
Can't do it.
Yep.
Can't have any alcohol in the vehicle that's not part of the manifested load. And that's the way the regulation reads.
Yep.
You cannot do it.
And I'm asking that just because there's always folks that want to push it to the limit. So go ahead and continue.
All right. So the motor carrier's safety measure is placed in a safety event group based upon the number of carrier inspections with applicable violations. So with this one, if every level one, two, three, and six will qualify for being included in the controlled substances alcohol safety event group. The safety group lists every motor carrier in their measure from all the inspections across the U.S. that has an applicable that applies here. When your measure score is listed in the group, is how your percentage is calculated. So with controlled substances, if we have a violation for one violation, we're in safety event group one, two is two. There's very little you can see that it goes up for each violation that's listed on an individual inspection report. It puts us into that next event group. And that's because it happens so little. And there's only like 21 different violations that can be listed on an inspection report. They're very rare and few and far between for those violations to be listed on an inspection report. And that's why they have the safety event groups based the way that they are.
So when discussing the basic measure what the example I went over. So if we see if we have a 3.15, it gives us a 30% for that basic. So if our measure was 3.10, we would be probably at a 29%. That's just showing how you would calculate it.
So uh, we this is a mistake that's listed on here. It's not a vehicle maintenance violation. These are the controlled substances and alcohol violations. They're all listed on level one, two, three, or six inspections. And we had already covered these levels of inspections.
So the only violations listed on a qualifying inspection report will affect the motor carrier's basic measure. So if a driver receives a citation warning but no inspection report, the citation warning will not affect the motor carrier or basic measure in SMS. If the violation listed on the inspection report is not listed in FMCSA CSA SMS methodology appendix A, then the violation doesn't have any point value and will not affect the motor carrier basic measure. So just basically, if a driver gets a DUI in his personal car, that's not going to pop up unless you're doing an MVR. You won't know about it if he doesn't report it.
Yeah, everybody always asks every now and then, how do we know what the point values are? Where do we find this information? You can download it off of FMCSA's website. You just do a Google search for FMCSA SMS. You go to the first page and it'll say SMS methodology. It'll be a PDF um, form that it'll download. And then on the last page, you'll see several times Appendix A, it'll be in blue. You just click on it, it'll download an Excel spreadsheet, and it'll have every violation that can be listed on an inspection report, as well as the associated point value that goes along with it. So, possession of drugs and alcohol and driving under the influence are the top three most cited violations. There are only 21 violations that can be written on a report, but these are the top three. And as you can see in the last year, there's 2,924 inspections that have drugs and other substances operating while in possession. That's the number of inspections, but the number of violations is different, and there's 3,078. The reason for that is they can cite multiple times for the different people that are in the vehicle. So if we have a driver and a co-driver, if it's in a common area of the vehicle, they can both the driver and the co-driver can be cited for being in possession of it because it's in a common area. And that's why the number of violations is higher. Now, operating a CMV while under the influence, we have 1,323 violations, and then we have 1,331. We have 1,323 inspections with 1,331 violations. I'm assuming that they are also citing the co-driver for being under the influence as well. Um, we have to understand that sometimes officers can list things on inspection reports that shouldn't be there, including listing things multiple times. So it's just some things that can be aware. And when we find those things that are listed multiple times that shouldn't be there, we could actually do data queues to have some of those violations removed.
Mark or Daniel, let me ask you a question. So number three, intoxicating, and number seven, intoxicating, they read similar, but they're obviously different violation codes. What's the difference in those two?
So you see how the first numbers in that first letter,
Yep.
392.5A, we got 5A and we got 5A3 and 5A2. They're two different parts of the regulation. You have to understand that also that every state can use a different type of violation software, reporting software when they do their inspections. So their inspection software is different. If they don't have the most updated codes, the codes that they do have will populate into the SMS system differently. So they'll count differently. It's just interesting. A few years ago, the FMCSA changed a lot of the coding that was being used across the inspection platforms from Inspect to Aspen, and now they have the FMCSA platforms. They added a lot of different codes. And people, the states that are using the old codes, even though the driver's cited for the same thing, will show up in the SMS as something a little bit different. just
Okay,
because of
great.
the coding that's used in the different inspection software. Eventually, everybody's supposed to be having not the same inspection software, but using the same coding. But it takes a while to get all 50 states on board.
Okay, great. Well, let's continue.
That's government at its best right there.
Right.
So for the most cited violations, as Mark was discussing, so we got operate CMV while in possession, um, operating a CMV while under the influence, and then intoxicating. No drivers shall be on duty or operate a motor vehicle while the driver possesses an intoxicating beverage, regardless of its alcohol content. So normally citations are issued for these type of violations, even if not listed on the inspection report. We could go to court for citations. So some violations, such as operating under the influence, there could be multiple citations issued based on state law as well. And courts like to dismiss citations if the driver pleads to the other citation issued. So basically, I mean, you could get two DUI charges, and I mean, you might plea out to the lesser one and not go to court.
Yeah.
I think we had a raised hand a minute ago, but I don't see a question. It was pretty quick. I think someone maybe named Renee. If you have a question, we welcome that. Go ahead and put it in the chat while the guys continue their conversation.
So
Yeah.
I just want to add on to this part. I live in southern Wisconsin, in between Milwaukee and Chicago. The Milwaukee metro area's got around 2 million people. Chicago metro area is the third largest metro area in the United States, right? So there's a lot of trucking here. We have a lot of stuff that run through our courts. You can't, judges and the court system do not take every, and the DA's office doesn't take every citation to court. Normally, every violation for drugs or alcohol, especially in a CMV, they normally have citations that go along with them, if not criminal charges. Criminal charges, same as a citation in FMCSA's eyes. And normally there will be multiple violations and citations issued for the same thing. So let's say that a person gets arrested for operating a motor vehicle while intoxicated, while in a CMV. They get arrested, then they're brought, and let's say that they to a breath testing machine and they blow, let's say, 0.10. It's an intoxicating for an automobile and way more than, for a CMV, because usually the CMV prohibited blood alcohol content is 0.04. I think it's like grams per liter or whatever. I don't know all the technical that goes along with it, but you get two citations that go along with that. You'll get the OWI and then you'll get the prohibited alcohol content. Most states have it as law that when they go to court, one of those two citations are going to automatically get dropped. And the driver or the driver's lawyer, well, usually has a say on which one that they want to accept because it's usually the same penalty as well. The thing that we want to stress on the motor carriers is if there are multiple citations, some citations aren't listed on the inspection report or the violations aren't with those citations, we want to get dismissed the citations that are associated with the violations listed on the inspection report. And then we plead guilty to the others. I 22 and a half years, I've arrested hundreds of drunk drivers and I never lost in court. So most likely there's going to be a conviction of some sort, right? So we want to get the dismissal of the citation that's listed for a violation on an inspection report, and then we can do a data queue. And what happens then, we show that dismissal, they have to take that off of the inspection report. This actually happened on one of our clients here in southeastern Wisconsin. I looked and was doing a data queue review of their violation. I saw that they had the OWI and a prohibited blood alcohol content. Citations issued for both. I knew one had to go away. I just looked up online because you can look up all citations online in Wisconsin, saw which one was dismissed, and we were able to actually get rid of two violations because they got rid of two tickets when the driver actually pled out to a couple more. So courts are very amenable and DAs are very open to having these because you can't take every citation to court. So if we get those multiple citations, it's actually a good thing for the motor carrier if we can take them to court because then it gives us more leverage on how the driver and a lawyer can handle those um, dismissals and pleading. Yeah, it looks like we got a question here.
Yeah, we've got
So,
actually two. I'm going to start with it. I'm not sure if it's Renee or Renia. What process does an officer determine if a driver is under the influence or intoxicated, aside from someone who's drunk as a skunk, when it's maybe not quite as obvious? What's the process?
they well they're gonna talk to you. They're gonna ask questions and kind of see how you're speaking, your mannerisms, are your do you have bloodshot watery eyes, slurred speech? Basically, they're trying to gather information to see if they're gonna put you through field sobriety test. Once they determine that, then they're going to do a few tests like HGN, horizontal gaze nystagmus, where they're going to look at your eyes, the walk and turn. They're going to do multiple tests, and then if they determine if they think you're impaired, then that's when they're going to arrest you or let you go. If they don't think you're impaired after the field sobriety test, then they're gonna let you continue driving. At the end of those tests, most likely they're gonna have you blow into a portable, they call it PBT, portable breath test, and then they're gonna have you blow into that, and it's gonna show what percent you're at, whether you're at 0.08, point or 0.10, and then that's just more evidence for them that they not really evidence, but that they made the correct decision in what they're seeing from those field sobriety tests.
We do
Yeah,
have a
it's pretty
question
much
for,
that the officer it takes the
yeah.
totality of the circumstances that are there. And we also have to remember that there are different thresholds for commercial motor vehicle drivers. All right. The first one is not a drop. You can't have anything on board. Okay, for alcohol. Number two, you have prohibited alcohol content. This is all for alcohol right here. Prohibited alcohol content in CMVs, 0.04. Some states can have it listed for commercial motor vehicles that are at 10,000, greater than 10,000 pounds gross vehicle weight rating, or they can bring it to the CDL portion of it. So if it's a vehicle that requires a CDL, it's a 0.04 versus the greater than 10,000 pounds GVWR. And then you have okay, full-blown prohibited blood alcohol content for any vehicle that you operate. Most states, I think all states are at 0.08. So there's different levels that go into it. If an officer can smell alcohol on you, you can pretty much guarantee that driver is going to be arrested and taken to a location where they can provide a sample of breath into a machine. A PBT is not the testing machine that is used. That's just something that the officer can use to decide whether they should go for breath or blood. Blood is more for drugs for first offense.
We have a question from Tina. I'm going to read it for the audience. I do have a driver who missed his follow-up drug test assigned by SAP, caused during the time driver was overseas, and now he's back to the US and applying for a job. The company's refusing to do the follow-up test and rehire, stating that the driver missed the assigned date for the drug test and he was not there for the assigned date. Does he have to go through SAP classes again and get a reevaluation, or can we just do the drug test as a follow-up and he can continue to work? A lot there.
I
That's a
think
good one that
yeah,
I would have to do research on. I believe they got to start it over.
I think it basically they're gonna take it as a refusal that he didn't show up, and then so he's gonna. I would have to double check, but I'm leaning more towards he's gonna have to redo the entire process and get
You
cleared.
can't just start driving again. There's no
Yeah.
way.
Here's my recommendation, Tina. At the end, when we show Mark and Daniel's emails again, phone number, why don't you reach out to them a little bit more? That'll give them a little bit more time. They said they want to double check it, but I mean, even if the driver was overseas, maybe on a vacation or what have you, um, those dates are important dates, and the court's not going to or the system's not going to just interpret. They expect compliance, but reach out to them and they'll have a little bit of time to look into that just to be sure that they are 100%. Let's go to the next slide.
So performing random inspections inside the CMV with these types of drugs or other substances operating while in possession while under the influence. Um, they can be, it's on every level one, two, or three. Every time you have contact with a driver, you're going to be assessing whether or not there's any drug or alcohol on board the driver, or if the driver is may possess it by the smell of the vehicle, or if they're trafficking it. There's a lot of drug trafficking that goes on with CMVs because they can carry a lot of substance in one vehicle.
Let's keep going on. Guys, I know the regulation reads that within 4 hours, there's not to be any alcohol that a driver partakes in. But in your opinion, are fleets doing a good enough job? When you go out and visit with motor carriers, are they comprehensive enough in explaining all of these things? The 4 hour limit, the fact that the blood alcohol content becomes an issue at half of the passenger level. Passenger, like you said, is 0.08, but for a truck driver, it's 0.04. But even at 0.02, that driver's going to be out of service for 24 hours. So the question is, how good are the education and reminder programs when you're visiting with fleets?
I think that they're really important, especially when you're hiring somebody. Your expectations, your policies you have in place, make sure you explain that. Sometimes it is a little bit difficult because there's some drivers who don't report to the or they go start driving from where they live, and they live in California, and the company's from Texas or Tennessee. But I think you have to do a good job explaining your expectations and policies when you do hire somebody.
Yeah, continuing education goes a long way. Every time you have a touch with the driver, always provide some sort of safety message to them, whether it's driving, hours of service. Uh, if you're transporting hazmat, we talk about, hey, this is where you have to keep your hazmat bill lading in the vehicle. It's nothing different with drug and alcohol. Can't have anything on board. Drugs, cannot do any drugs unless it's prescribed for you. And then you still can't do THC, even if it's prescribed for you. Can't do it. Even in states where it's allowed, you can't do it. You get CBD oil and you rub it on your knee and it makes it feel better and you pop positive for THC. The government does not care. You're going into the clearinghouse. You have to absolutely stay away from it 100%. Otherwise, you risk going into the clearinghouse. God forbid it affects your driving and cause a crash.
And I know FMCSA put something, I think it was December, for that executive order that Trump put out, basically wanting to move marijuana into Schedule 3. Right now to Schedule 1 and still prohibited, so don't even have it in your vehicle. So they're gonna leave it like that until they get further clearance.
All right. What else do you want to get from this page?
So from this page, we're talking about the performance safety sensitive functions in the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. If you see number 4 and number 8, they're basically the same code besides the DAC, which Mark kind of explained why that happens. That's basically they're prohibited in the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. So make sure when you are hiring drivers, you're doing a full query on the drivers, and then you're doing limited queries every 12 months. When a status for a driver changes, you should be receiving an email. That way you know that there's a status change on the driver that you ran 10 months ago.
And so when that status does change and you go to prohibited, your CDL, that driver's CDL is also going to be taken away. And hopefully that you have constant monitoring for that driver's CDL, and you'll get information on that as well. Be very aware that once a driver goes prohibited, they're taking their CDL, they get stopped on the same day. That officer can see the prohibition. That officer will see the CDL is no longer valid. You're going to get hit with a driver fitness violation for allowing a driver to operate a CDL vehicle without having a CDL because it's going to be gone, and for operating in a safety sensitive function while prohibited in the clearinghouse. That's how severe that this things go. It's a domino effect now that the different areas of FMCSA enforcement are talking together and with the states when it comes to CDOs.
So, to add something, the state should downgrade your license within 60 days. I mean, it could be sooner than 60 days, but they have 60 days to downgrade it.
Let's go to the next slide.
So now this is something that's a little bit different. When it comes to drug and alcohol, we're normally talking about people with CDLs operating vehicles that require CDLs. So any driver who has a CDL should be checked in the clearinghouse if driving a vehicle not requiring a CDL. So if you're a company that operates just box trucks, none of them require CDLs, and you have an employee come in and they have a CDL, you will have to do a clearinghouse check to make sure that they are not prohibited. If they have a CDL and they are prohibited and they get stopped by law enforcement, they will see because they will check because he has a CDL. If they're prohibited, they write the violation up on the inspection report. And if they're in interstate transport, in interstate commerce, they're going to be placed out of service, even though it doesn't require a CDL. If it's a non-CDL driver, let's say the driver never had a CDL, you're in a box truck that doesn't require a CDL, none of the controlled substances and alcohol regulations apply. They don't. Why is this in there? I don't know. This is just how FMCSA has determined to write this issue up. Now, if you're a CDL operator and you get prohibited and you voluntarily give up your CDL, take it out completely, then you should be okay. But be aware that this can happen. And if you're a company that operates both CDL type vehicles and non-CDL vehicles, make sure that any people that you hire to operate the non-CDL vehicles that may have a CDL, that you do a clearinghouse check for them.
Let's
And we
go
can't
deeper
use them until they give it up.
into the clearinghouse. I think the next slide's also on the clearinghouse.
Mhm.
And just a quick reminder to the audience, please submit any questions to the chat. We're starting to get probably a little bit more into what they've seen in the field and questions you may have. Some things that may not always be black and white, but the regulations allow motor carriers to hire someone who had been in the drug and alcohol clearinghouse as a abuser previously. So we want to kind of get into these things, especially if capacity does tighten throughout the rest of this year. Firms are going to be looking for drivers. It's going to be a little bit more challenging than it has been for the last couple of years. Anyway, take it away from here.
So when are we reporting drivers into the clear now? So when there's a verified positive test, carrier has to report it within 3 business days. The MROs have to report it within 2 days. When there's a refusal, when they refuse a test, the drug and alcohol test, you're going to be reporting them. When you have actual knowledge, so supervisor employer has a knowledge of use of drugs or alcohol or admission of usage by the driver, or if they leave the facility once the drug and alcohol test has started. So three of the four are pretty straightforward. I want to get into what actual knowledge means. This is from the regulations. So actual knowledge means actual knowledge by an employer that a driver has used alcohol or controlled substance based on the employer's direct observation of the employee, information provided by the driver's previous employers, a traffic citation for driving a CMV while under the influence of alcohol or controlled substance, or an employee admission or alcohol of controlled substance use. So direct observation, the meaning of that is observation of alcohol or controlled substance use, and does not include observation of employee behavior or physical characteristics sufficient to warrant reasonable suspicion testing. So that's key right there. So if you're seeing, say for example, maybe he has watery eyes or you could smell odor of alcohol. Those are things that might give you reasonable enough to do a reasonable suspicion test, but not to report to the clearinghouse. Now, if you're looking at your cameras and you see a driver drinking a beer or doing some drugs, then that's direct observation that he's doing it.
So, so when clients ask me about, hey, Mark, do I need to test for them? Because they got hit with possession. I'm like, no, you don't have to. But if you ask them and they say yes, yes, you got to, because that's an admission, right? If you have reasonable suspicion, you ask, and they admit to it, then yes, that is actual knowledge there, an admission by that driver. So, but when we do that, we got to make sure that we document everything very well. We got to say we asked the driver, they admitted to it. These are the circumstances surrounding why I asked them, things of that nature. And if you can get a voice recording or a video recording, even better.
Yeah. I actually had a carrier reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, we got this video of him doing drugs." I said, "Well, there's your direct observation." I mean, they fired the driver right away, but it happens. Does
It
happen.
does.
So on the refusal to take a random test, a couple of nuances there. I mean, we know that in the world of sports, NFL, Major League Baseball, the Olympics, there's testing for, in this case, steroids. But what's sort of the best practice of fleets? How often are they doing random testing for drugs throughout the year? Is it once a quarter, once a month? And do they also do it for alcohol, or is it just concentrated around drugs?
We actually have a slide that's going to cover that here in a
All
few
right,
slides.
let's go to it.
All right. So, when making the decision for hiring former offenders, it's a company decision when hiring former offenders. The steps that they got to complete prior to the hiring, got to make sure they got a valid CDL because if they're in the clearinghouse, it's going away if they're prohibited. You got to do a full drug and alcohol clearinghouse query to make sure that they're not prohibited. Review company drug policies with the driver, clear driver with the insurance carrier because they're going to want to know about it as well because it's going to come around. And then perform random CMV inspections of the interior of the vehicle. Keep an eye on them. Do I recommend hiring former offenders? Well, it depends. Is it something that just happened? Like a year ago, and they did the return to duty testing. I mean, a couple of years ago, and they just finished the return to duty testing. You got to have that conversation with the driver. Or is this something that happened 20 years ago when they're in their mid 20s and now they're in their late 40s, maybe early 50s? Two completely different people at that point and lifestyle changes. So just use good judgment and go from there.
But yeah, but what about those random test, companies? What's best practices that you've seen? How often, and does that include alcohol, or is it mostly oriented towards drugs?
What I've seen, I mean, minimum has to be 50%
Take that.
for controlled substance, 10% for alcohol. Usually most of what carriers are doing is they're hiring a third party and they control that. So they're picking the drivers at random. They're dealing with that. A lot of carriers don't deal with that.
So I apologize. The information is right here on this one.
Yeah. So drug and alcohol programs, what I think a drug and alcohol program should have is written policies, review with drivers and confirm they understand the policy with the zero tolerance for drug and alcohol violations and positive results. Then we go into testing, make sure you're doing the pre-employment testing, the random, make sure either you or your the third party administrator is doing the random testing. Post accidents, the testing, the 32 hours for drugs, and 2 and 8 hours for the alcohol. If the test can't be completed, make sure you're documenting the reason why. So if you're involved in a really bad accident and your driver got flown to a different state for some reason for treatment, then obviously you're not going to be able to do those tests. So make sure you're documenting the reason why. Reasonable suspicion, make sure at least you have one person from your company that has gone through the reasonable suspicion training. And then if you do have a driver that's positive, the return of duty and the follow-up testing, make sure that's completed. And then you're doing the clearinghouse queries, the full and the limited, and then maintaining all records. This is going to come into play, not necessarily on roadside inspections. It's more when you're going to get audited. They're going to be looking through this information. Are you completing the 50% that you're required to do? Are you waiting for the test results to come in before you're allowing that driver to drive? I've experienced and seen companies get dinged for it on audits when they send the driver for a pre-employment test, and then the same day they put him in the truck. And then he's out driving, they get an audit, and then they didn't know if he was positive or negative before he actually um, was out on the road. So,
Yeah. And another thing to add here, if you're using a third party testing service, hold them accountable. If we're testing at 50%, we have to make sure that we are doing 50% for controlled substances and 10% for alcohol. If the consortium messes up and doesn't hit the required rate for whatever reason, who gets in trouble? The motor carrier gets in trouble, right? Because you hired that part of it out to somebody else. We just got to make sure that we're doing it at the prescribed rate. And the prescribed rate for 2026, and it can change year to year, is 50% for controlled substances, 10% for alcohol.
So, Mark or Daniel, Marie has a question. If a driver goes for a random alcohol test, his logbook should be locked?
No,
Okay.
no. Random alcohol test, you tell them to go show up, it's on duty, not driving. Okay. If he drives his vehicle over there, it's driving up until that point, on duty, not leave the logbook alone, let him go in and does his stuff. Because after 6 minutes, that ELD is going to default to on duty, not driving. When he gets back in, doesn't have to touch it again. He start driving away. It'll show up drive time. You don't have to lock his log for that.
Okay. I think we've got one or two more slides as well. Keep them coming. I mean, there's always things that when you're talking about an area that sometimes society doesn't know what to talk about when it comes to drug and alcohol. It's sort of like, with your kids, you think sometimes, as long as nothing's said, everything must be okay, but it's not always that way.
Uh, So just like with every violation that's out there, when you get an audit, there are acute and critical violations that are associated with drug and alcohol testing, such as using a driver before receiving a negative pre-employment drug test, failing to conduct a random alcohol test at the annual rate, controlled substances testing at the annual rate, and they're going to consider the everything within the last 12 months. They don't go back a full 2 years during an audit. They're only going to go back the last for violations within the last 12 months. Just be aware of that. And if we get violated for it, then we're going to get a red triangle on our SMS.
Why don't you continue with that slide? And we just had another
so
question from,
control. So the data queues. Is it possible to successfully data queue vehicle maintenance violations? And based on if officer cites a violation that has an exception or interpretation, violation coding is incorrect and the correct coding has a lesser point value. Violation is listed as an out of service and it isn't. Violation listed isn't a train inspection item and officer is wrong in applying the law. Like Mark mentioned, I mean, there's not many violations, like if you're comparing it to hours of service and vehicle maintenance, but there is violations out there that can be dedicated. I know Mark has had a couple uh,
Yeah.
successful ones, especially one out of my home state in Arizona that he shared with me. So they're out there, but they're you won't see them a lot compared
Yeah.
to other violations.
A lot of times when it comes to alcohol and drugs, there's a lot of laws that go in that are affected by this. And who are the best people to contact when it comes to this? Prior law enforcement for some information. You call a lawyer, they're going to charge you money. You call me and Daniel, we're going to have a conversation with you for a little while and try to help you out. That's what Reliance Partners, our safety team, is all about, is helping out our clients and prospective clients. Um, we have to look at each violation individually and what the officer put down on the inspection report, right? The violation that we want out of Arizona, um, if it's the one I'm thinking of, is they thought that there was alcohol in a can of whatever and they couldn't identify it, so they wrote it up anyways, but they had no idea what it was. So we were able to successfully data queue that and get that removed. Now, what you don't get removed is that 24 hours that the driver was placed out of service for. You don't get that time back, but at least it won't affect your CSA score anymore for that violation. Citations, um, most times citations are issued for these types of violations and multiple citations are issued. There is a strategy to handle in handling citations in the court system. Try to get if it's only one citation, try to get a change of violation to something else and the point value go, most of those point values are 10 for drug and alcohol. We can get that from 10 down to 1 point if we're successful in getting a change of violation. If we get a dismissal or not guilty and there's no court costs on a dismissal, then we can do a data queue and have that entire violation removed, which helps out quite a bit. Because you saw that the different groups, group one is one violation on inspection report, group two is two inspection reports with violations. So it could probably drop us out of the group, which is good for us. So there's multiple ways of doing this as well.
Mark, you brought up an interesting thing. When I think about a lot of craft beers, very colorful cans and locations. But, there's been an emergence of all these new sort of pop fizz drinks that, we don't recognize what they are the way we do a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi product. And I could see where the officer would maybe just jump to a conclusion that must be a beer. It's not something I recognize. And so you were able to challenge that one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a product out there that I'm not recommending any product. I'm just saying it's out there, and every time I see it, I'm like, who would want to drink that? It's called what? Liquid Death.
Oh yeah, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I think I
Yeah,
had half of one time. That'll be
is
my
that just
only
water
time.
or is that like alcohol?
I
I
can't
have
even
no
remember.
idea.
It was just like, why did I waste, my breath having this? We do
But
have
you,
another question here from, pardon me if I'm butchering your name, but Shakanuza. He says here, okay, it's home time, the 34 hours before the restart. What if the drug test was done on that home time? Does it become a logbook violation? Good question.
all right. So, is the driver working for the company when you're sending them to do a drug test? Yes, that's on duty, not driving. Does the driver have to drive his truck, tractor, and trailer to the testing site? No, you can drive your own car. You can have somebody else drive you. The time spent doing the testing is on duty, not driving, and that's
So,
it.
so even though he's used up his hours of service for the week and he's
It
in that
might
restart, for that particular task at hand, it qualifies as a work.
it's a work day.
Effort. Yeah.
It might break up your 34-hour reset. It stinks, but that's trucking life at this point. It's got to be on duty, not driving. Realistically, how will a roadside officer know if that when that drug and alcohol testing was done? They won't, because you won't have information inside the truck. Where they can find that at is during an audit. They can look at your drug and alcohol testing, see when it was done, and then go and look at the driver's hours of service if it's within the last 6 months, and then they can compare the two. And they could write in a violation for it. Would it be a critical falsification if they didn't log it correctly? It depends on the amount of time at that point. So, and only
Okay,
critical false violations will affect your safety rating during an audit when it comes to falsifications.
we've got about 5 minutes here. Mark, why don't you guys put up your contact information again? I think that's the last slide. Um, we've got time for another question or two. Tina, if you're still on the line, again, we definitely want you or others to reach out to Mark and Daniel if you've got a question, maybe thought of something later in today's presentation. Um, just more sort of anecdotally, Mark, probably because you had a longer career as a commercial truck inspector, but I grew up in the 70s. The drug that was popular in society, of course, was marijuana. Cocaine kind of came into its own during the 80s and 90s. We know about opioids. Did you see a shift kind of that way in the drivers over your 22 years? Were opioids as big of a problem for drivers, or was it still some of the more traditional drugs?
I think it was still some of the more traditional drugs. Fentanyl really didn't come into play until about 10 years ago.
Yep.
It really started hitting pretty hard then. I think maybe with the OxyContin um, issuance of those prescriptions, starting like 20, 25 years ago, maybe 30 years ago now, that had some play into it. Things to be aware of when you're talking to your drivers, any changes, abnormal changes in their behavior. Are they normally low key and then they're super hyper and, I'll go get them and, they're that's not normal for a lot of people. And it's same way with the other way around. Usually they're go get them high strung and whatnot, they're always talking, and then they come in and they're kind of drooling out the side of their mouth and falling asleep when they're talking to them. That's a good indication of heroin use or fentanyl use. And there are professional, I hate to say this, but it's a term for law enforcement, professional drunks out there. They could be at a .20 and higher and have a conversation with you, and the only way that you could tell is you can smell it coming from that person, the smell of an alcoholic beverage. And even when you put them through field sobriety, they pass everything but except horizontal gaze nystagmus. That's where they check the eyes because you have that's involuntary control. I had a gentleman just like that. I had another gentleman that I had arrested for operating while intoxicated after he drove his semi from Chicago up to Green Bay, got loaded, and was driving past me in Racine. Didn't stop at the scale. As soon as I stopped, you could smell it coming from him, and then we had to go into that different mode of, all right, this could be criminal operating while intoxicated in Wisconsin.
I think one thing we know from business overall is it doesn't matter whether you're addressing a problem or reinforcing a positive, things just have to be repeated regularly. And so, as you suggested earlier, Mark, whenever those drivers are coming in to headquarters or one of your larger facilities, make sure that you're reemphasizing a safety message and have some of that be a little bit about your drug and alcohol policies. But it has to be just over and over and over again with all things if you're going to move an organization forward. That's just the way we're wired as human beings. You guys have any last minute closing comments here? We've got a minute or two left before we wrap it up.
No, just thanks for joining. If you have any questions for me or Mark, just feel free to reach out to us, whether you're a client or not. We're here to help you guys.
Yeah. Maintain a zero tolerance policy. If there is a crash involving one of your drivers and they are under the influence or have it in their possession, expect lawyers to get involved and possible nuclear verdicts. Take care of your motor carrier. Take care of your company.
Absolutely. With that, we wrap it up. This will be out on podcast probably next week or so. Thanks to everyone who listened. Again, if you've got follow-up comments or questions, feel free to reach out to Daniel or Mark right there, mark.barler Barlar at Reliance Partners. Sometimes people put an O in place of one of those A's. And then Daniel.Vega, Vega at Reliance Partners. And wait a minute, all of a sudden we're getting, oh, a lot
No,
of
people are
thank
saying
yous.
thank you.
All right. Appreciate you all. And everyone have a great Valentine's Day in a couple of days. Take care.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.